Okay, welcome back. We're going to continue our conversation about the metric system here and finish up this week's lesson with some more metric system conversions. So far we've just been talking about converting within our metric system, so changing our prefixes from kilo all the way down to milli. Maybe we have meters or grams or liters. We talked about it, kind of this analogy of the stairway, and that when you're going to travel up from the smaller ones, you're going to divide by 10, and then as you travel down, you're going to multiply by 10. So remember here, and then on our side here, we have the general idea of how to do this, that you find your starting step, you multiply or divide by 10 for each step, you move until you get to the units you want. So we've done a little bit of practice with that, and I think everybody's feeling pretty comfortable on those basic ways to get between the different prefixes with the same base unit. So now we're going to build on that and go to our next step here. And this, I'm on page 5-7 of our metric system. So moving on, we just finished up with 5-6, and you'll note at the top of 5-7 we list some selected metric conversion factors. So these are all the factors you're going to have to know, and you'll note that they're on your equation sheet as well for your final exam, and these will help you with your tests too. And so you'll notice here that there's a difference between what we've been doing up to this point. So like I said, with our staircase, we've been looking within meters and going from maybe kilometers to millimeters or decimeters to centimeters. Now we're going to go from British to metric. So 1 inch to centimeters, or pounds to kilograms, quarts to liters, centimeters to milliliters, centimeters cubed to milliliters. So all these different types of equalities. And remember, when we talked before about unit conversions, we can call these also equality relationships. Equality relationships. And they are written here in a horizontal format, but we can also write these in a vertical format too and use them for dimensional analysis. So let's take a look at how we might do that here with some example problems. So at the bottom here, let's just start with this first example. We have here, remember that from chapter 2, that unit conversion was done by that dimensional analysis, which sounds really complicated, but if you remember, it's just a method of multiplying by these equality relationships in order to be able to cancel out the units. So unit conversions for the metric system can be done in the same way. So let's look at a couple examples here, and then I'm going to have you do a problem too. So for this example, I want to convert 10 gallons to liters. Okay, so if you remember from our unit conversions, we're going to start with 10 gallons. So the first thing we're going to do is write that as those units as a fraction, so there's no denominator there, so it's just gallons over 1. We want to know, we're at gallons and we want to get to liters. So we can look up here at our relationships. Well, we don't have a relationship that goes straight from gallons to liters. We do know, I'll put that here, we've got some known equality relationships. So we know that 4 quarts is equal to 1 gallon. That is something we had talked about before, so it's not on this list because we had discussed that previously, but that's another thing that we would know. So we have 4 quarts is 1 gallon. That's one equality relationship we would use, but if we take a look at that, we'd wind up with our answer in quarts. And we want to get it all the way to liters, so we're going to have to use this second new equality relationship that we're learning today, that 1 quart, it's so close, it's almost equal to 1 liter, but not quite. So it's 0.946 liters. So we put that in here, 0.946 liters is 1 quart, our other equality relationship. But we have to make sure, remember we've talked about this before, that when we write these equality relationships down, we're always canceling on that diagonal. So we're making sure that the units that we don't want are in the numerator and denominator. So if I use the equality relationship here, 1 gallon over 4 quarts, that wouldn't work out. I'd wind up with gallons squared over quarts. So I need to put these gallons numerator and denominator so they can cancel out. Same thing with my quarts here, numerator, denominator, so they can cancel out. And that way I'm left with my liters here, which is what I want for my final answer. And then from there, it's just simply multiplying across. When I take a look here at my denominator, I just have a bunch of ones, right? Once I cancel off my unit, I just have 1 times 1 times 1. So all I need to do here to get this final answer is just to multiply across for my numerator. So I'll have 10 times 4 times 0.946, and I get that 37.84, and then I have to remember to put those units on the end of liters. Okay, so it's just coming up with which of those equivalent relationships I'm going to need, how to write them, what, which orientation, what goes in the numerator or what goes in the denominator, so that they can cancel each other out appropriately, so that I'm left with the units that I want in the end. So those equality relationships are going to be given to you. We've got these ones, and then we have the ones from before, so they're just not all on the same page here. And your task is going to be to write them and put them in such an order that you can get from what you're starting with to what you want to get at the end. So let's try the second one here. This time we're going to convert 50 millimeters to inches. Okay, and by this time, the millimeter divided by 1, sort of stopped writing that. As I said before, when we have something over 1, you don't have to write it, just kind of doing that just to show that it's the same thing. But at this point, you're probably getting pretty used to that idea, so don't really have to write that down. When we look at our relationships here up at the top, we know inches and centimeters, but we don't know millimeters and inches. So our first step in this is going to be to get from our millimeters to centimeters. And that's where we can use those relationships that we've been looking at. You can remember the steps here when you think about millimeters and centimeters. That millimeters at the bottom, centimeters is going to be, remember that times 10 relationship for all of these. So 10 bigger. So we've got the 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. And then here are 1 inch and 2.54 centimeters. So again, I'm going to make sure that I've written these correctly, make sure that my units are going to cancel out. And I can put that over 1 if that's going to make that more clear to you that that's in the numerator. That's a fine thing to do. So my millimeters, numerator and denominator are going to cancel out. My centimeters, numerator and denominator cancel out, and I'm left with my inches, which is what I want my answer to be in. Now in this case, I can multiply straight across on my numerator, but I just have 50, okay, because it's 50 times 1 times 1. So what I'm going to do in my calculator here is I have my 50, I'm going to divide it by, and then I have 10 times 2.5. So in my calculator, I'm going to use divide parentheses 10 times 2.54. Okay, and I get that 1.96. All of these things, we're just going to round that to the nearest whole number, so we're just going to call that 2 inches. Okay, another way to do that, if you didn't want to use the parentheses there, you can do it step by step. You can take your 50, divide it by 10, hit your equal sign, and then divide that by 2.54. Okay, either way is going to get you to that correct whole number answer of 2 inches. It just depends if you want to do your division one thing at a time or put them together and use your parentheses. That's going to be up to you to choose. Okay, so let's take this last one, converting 20 kilometers to miles. And what I want you to do, I know it's on your book here, but it got a little bit jumbled. So what I want you to do, I'm going to change a little bit. And I want you to go ahead and try this, okay? So let's cross that off, and you can use it as an assistance to you if you want. But why don't you try to convert 100 kilometers to miles? Okay, and let's think about, before you start doing that, let's go ahead and make sure we have all the equality relationships you're going to need to do that. Okay, so we want to go from kilometers to miles. Let's think about what information that we know. We know that there's going to be, if we have to go all the way up here to the 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. Okay, so here's our equivalent relationships. I'm going to put them over here. 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters is one relationship you're going to use. 1,000 meters equals 1 kilometer. That's one we've been talking about. 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. 1 foot equals 12 inches. And 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. Okay, now I know you have this example that's been crossed off there that you can use, and you can certainly use that, but let's make sure that you understand how to write each of these as you spread them out, how to cross off all of those units and see what your final answer is going to be. Make sure you multiply everything in the numerator and then divide that numerator by everything in the denominator, and we'll make sure that that math is going right too. So take a minute and send me the answer to that in the Q&A, and then we'll go over how to set that up and how to use your calculator to get the right answer.